Thank you all for having us here. The thing is, the introduction, most of the things are in the brochure, and most introductions start with things like, I'm a 50-year-old, I graduated in this and this, and I've been working for so many years there. What really interests me when I hear people introducing themselves is what they care about, what is important for them, what is their purpose. And a purpose is something that you find when you live and when you are living in the moment. And what I found out is I started my career thinking I was going to be a teacher. I studied languages, and on the way I said, I don't want to be a teacher. I want to inspire people in finding their true self. And in work then, after 4 years in sales, I went into HR. And since '95, I have been in HR, both as a consultant, as an HR manager, director, whatever. And I've met many, many people in many countries. I've been working in virtually every continent with all types of cultures and people. And what I find is what really connects us is our desires, our purposes, and our fears. And if you look at the workplace today, this is a challenging workplace. And maybe Mr. Donald Trump has made it even more complex for the future. And he definitely has not lowered our fear level. It is about this challenging workplace that we would like to have a very open discussion with you and with the three ladies that are here with me. And we want to discuss how does HR as a profession cope with this and how it proactively helps to take away fears, to add purpose, and to make sure that those results that are in every paper, in every annual survey, where there is a 40-page Excel sheet delivery of results, and then there is 4 lines of social impact. So how do we deal with that? This is what we want to talk to you about. Sheila. Thank
you. Hello. Welcome again. My name is Sheila Johnson, and I'm currently the HCA. I'm working for HCA. Many of you may not know HCA as a brand, but essentially they run many of the private hospitals in London, namely, to name a few, Princess Grace and the Portland and the Wellington. So in line, yes, as Wim has said, we're all here to talk about our people. As people managers is the new term, I think, for HR these days. And in all our workshops, we'll be touching on all the elements of how we do inspire, engage, and relate, really, to our employees on a number of topics. I understand there's a number of sort of set questions that we'll be sharing with you shortly. And I believe there's an open to further questions as we go through the morning. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila.
Morning, I'm CJ Green. I'm the Chief People Officer for Servest. We're a facilities management company, so we effectively do all the work to support businesses so they can focus on their core business. So, for example, we do catering for the BBC, we clean the Houses of Parliament, and we provide security for Foreign Commonwealth Office, as well as having Tesco amongst our major clients. So a vast array and diversity of workforce, which makes it really, really interesting. To talk about what I'm passionate about, it's actually about making our people work fit for purpose in our businesses rather than sort of being obsessed with HR best practice. So that's kind of very much where I come from.
Thank you, CJ. Good morning. My name's Sue Swanborough. I'm the HR Director for General Mills in Europe, so that's UK, Ireland and Germany, with some responsibility for Nordic matrix organisations. I'm sure a number of you are used to. It's a bit confusing to say, what am I actually responsible for? So General Mills is a food business, for those of you who haven't heard of us. So brands like Haagen-Dazs, El Del Paso, Green Giant, Nature Valley, so fantastic job working with some really great brands. I started my career degree in physics and chemistry, highly relevant to my current job, obviously. Became a scientist, worked for Boots, then went into manufacturing when I was at Boots. Went to work for Mars in manufacturing, had various roles across the supply chain until I found myself in HR probably about halfway through my career to date. And I guess, you might say, well, that sounds a really bit of a random career. For me, it's geography, because what I realised was when I was in manufacturing that what I really cared about, so my purpose, was helping people to grow in self-esteem. So actually, if you can get that right, it's just finding the platform and the geography where you can do that to the best extent. I find that HR is a fabulous platform and a great place to do that.
Absolutely agree. And so I would like to start with the first question. And Jason, if I can request to have my booklet with my questions that was on the stand that you took away just a couple of minutes ago. Well, the mindware is working at this hour of day, so I remember the first question. How is HR considered? Thank you so much. How is HR considered in your company, and what is the perception that people have when they talk about HR in your company?
So shall I start? So it's perhaps not by chance that I'm in an organisation where people are really important. It's really easy to say that, isn't it? General Mills has been around for 150 years, and we really fundamentally believe that success is through our people. We have had periods over the past year where we've maybe thought, actually, we could do with a bit more focus. So particularly when we were starting off our international business, which was after a big acquisition. General Mills acquired Pillsbury in 2002. So we had an international division, which was everything outside North America. So bringing together lots of markets, lots of different ways of working, not necessarily a really cohesive common culture. So in order to expedite that, the international division said, actually, we're going to have 3 priorities. It's going to be growth, people, and profit. And that was just amazing for us. So we actually measured people, and people had their bonuses based on some people objectives that sat within each market. So the reason for saying that is just an example of actually how HR is perceived. To actually have everybody's bonus based on the objectives that you've set in an HR function, I think is fabulous. We don't have that anymore because actually it created the pendulum swing that we needed to get the balance right. But it was a fantastic, I think, reflection of how HR is perceived. So very much in there, in the core of the business.
Thank you very much. CJ?
I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about, kind of how HR is perceived. I think if we're all real with ourselves, quite often HR can be quite transactional in nature, and I think quite viewed in quite a transactional way by kind of management teams at times. We've worked quite hard in Servest that to kind of get away from that, kind of imagining that there is an administrative function and actually have more to offer. I think sometimes in HR we can get a bit of an obsession about that kind of thing, and a bit of an obsession about how we are perceived, and a bit of navel-gazing. In reality, if you are truly delivering what the business need, does it matter what the perception is? And that's, that's perhaps me just being a little bit awkward, but if you're delivering what the business need and driving performance in your business, how people view you, is that really important, other than for yourself?
I fully agree, CJ. And I would like to come back to that.
So for me, touching on what I mentioned earlier on in our new world really, is that we're not necessarily known as HR people anymore, or HR business partners. We're much more people managers and people partners. I think that might be the new term for the HR BPs in the future, is being people partners. And for me, in terms of what's the perception of HR in the current organisation, HR is made up of about 80 people in total. In some organisations that could be hundreds, and in many organisations it's just one. So the question is for me really, how am I perceived as an individual and as a person? Because as our main role is to have impact and influence with our people, supporting our managers in delivering those results that we need. So it's really a reflection really on your own style. Of course, you are influenced by the culture of the business and the wider team and the leadership and the direction that HR is portraying. But essentially, you are what you are. And as an individual, that's what people will see. And that's what it's sort of, for me, it's about being true to yourself as well. So it's an interesting observation to think when you ask the question, how is HR perceived? You're really putting yourself on a platform such as we are, and people are making a judgment on you every day. And in my workshop later on, which you'll hear about, it's very much around changing the concept of HR being something which people traditionally used to sort of fear. And the HR director or managers walking down the corridor, there's an element of fear for various reasons, and it's switching that to a feeling of, well, let's say a bit more of a friendly face and a supportive.
Thank you very much, Sheila. I want to come back to what you just said and about HR being perceived as an agent that can really drive the culture. And the question that I have then is that HR that can drive that, or is it the CEO that really has to allow you to do that?
So I see our role in HR very much as being a catalyst, creating the conversations, holding up the mirror, challenging and provoking, and saying actually what's really called for from the business. So, you know, the days are gone, I think maybe we were just referring it to it between us indirectly, that actually for me it's not, you know, are we separate from the business? It's actually we are the business, actually we contribute to overall business delivery, and the expertise that we have is, I think, being that catalyst, being that role model. What's the thing that we can really do to further enable our talent, get the right organisations fit for purpose and the culture, and work with the different people in the business to enable that. So it's not that you have these silos, but we're all together achieving the same thing. So I'm not big into the OHR says this. I would much rather see the leader, whoever the leader might be, whether it's a local line manager, whether it's CEO, whoever, actually doing what's needed to grow and inspire the people, rather than me standing up there and doing something. It's about what's the right thing for the business. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, let's let the audience decide on whether it answers the question. I think that when we talk about HR, and whether it's people or HR, we have been talking about reinventing HR for the last 40 years. And every 10 years, HBR comes with, we should blow up HR and reinvent HR. And now we've changed the name into people. But did we change the behavior of people? Did we? That's a question I have.
The reality of it is, you know, you can rebrand anything, but actually, you know, it is about how people kind of go about their work and what they're really interested in delivering. So, again, you know, and I don't mean to just repeat what I said last time, but you know, it doesn't really matter what we call it, and we can have lots of really healthy debate around what we should be doing to deliver for a business. But ultimately, what matters is how we are supporting businesses, and I couldn't agree more. Actually, you know, historically, HR and the people profession have had a little bit of a bad habit of imagining they have all of the answers, and really helpfully, because I don't, we've now decided that we don't have to have all the answers. That actually, our responsibility is around this is our area of expertise. What we are responsible for is really learning as much as we possibly can about our profession and growing ourselves so that we can be the people that can bring innovation, new ideas and new thinking to our businesses around people. But imagining people is only the remit of our profession is just really naive and quite short-sighted. So I don't think it matters what we call ourselves. What it matters is how we are conducting ourselves.
So could I rephrase that, CJ, as we need to be open to not knowing everything, as to business is actually what happens at work every day, every moment, the moment of truth. It is behavior that we talk about, because most of the things that HR was seen as to be the administrative beacon that had all the answers to all the things and that could calculate what you would be earning and everything, this will be done by computers, and they can do that far better than we can. So when I go to a doctor and I ask, how is my cholesterol? And he tells me, well, it's average. I'm not happy, because I don't know what average is, and I don't feel that I'm an average person. I'm unique. We are all unique. So hence my question, coming back to that new role of HR, what do you measure in your company, and how do you measure it? Sheila.
So we all, I'm sure everyone has employee the traditional employee surveys that are conducted once a year or once every 2 years, and then you base your forward planning on the results of that. As you said, Wim, with technology, that's changing, and with our concept of being more people orientated. And years ago, and again in my workshop that I'll be talking about later, decades ago, the business and the HR function was so much more around, before technology as well. I'm talking many decades ago, before we really enjoyed computers and certainly emails and texts and all online technology. It was around walking and it was around talking. That concept has dwindled away significantly through the years. Today, it's a click of the button and it's talking to people through technology. And it's fascinating, in a recent poll actually that CIPD did on communications and where communication sits and who owns communication. And a recent study confirmed that I think it was sort of less than 25% of organisations have HR owning communications. So you really need to think about how are these messages that are coming from the board, from that strategic view and direction of where the business is going. What is the message that's going down the line, and who is delivering that message? I think traditionally it sits in some marketing functions, and marketing, of course, is primarily for external comms and influence. And you would think, hope maybe that they don't quite have the skills that we do to communicate and connect with our people. So for me, that's just extremely worrying and concerning. And all the organisations that I've joined, I have put communication at the heart of the HR agenda and taken ownership for that. Whether it's a small organisation or managed to have influence over a larger group, because I truly believe that we have the skills in HR. We have, as we've all said, ended up in HR. I don't think we probably left with children and either, as you said, you wanted to be a teacher. I don't think many people go through their teenage years thinking, I want to be a HR director or a people partner. It is often something which you fall into because of your passion for people and being able to connect with them. So if you're not owning communications, just reflect on who is and on what those messages are.
Sheila, do you also include there the how of the communication?
The how, yeah. As we said, the technology is taking over, and we're relying on this perception of HR is primarily now due to how people are hearing things, and often it's second or third hand. So some of the initiatives that I personally introduced is to go back to the old school, if you like, the old way of walking and walking and talking. It sounds really quite simplistic, but it's really just being in front of people.
I think could I just build on that a bit as well? So it seems like we've got into conversation about the role of HR. Funny that quite often happens, doesn't it? And it almost feels like the sexy bit is the new bit. It's about it's not about that administration, that payroll bit. I think we have to be quite careful, because at the end of the day, that's our responsibility. And actually, even if it's click of the button and we've got, that enables us to have more time to do the stuff that is really even more added value, we've got to get that right. So we can't think of that as, that's the dull stuff. We have a responsibility to focus and get that right, because we're in danger of going off after the next sexy thing, forgetting actually where we get the credibility in our organisation. So if I think, of what my objectives are for my team, there's one about delivering business results, there's one about getting the basics right. And my team say to me, Sue, it's not basic, recruitment is not basic, training is not basic, payroll, comp and ben is not basic. I know that, but actually the business sees it as that. That is our job to deliver. We have to get that right. And then you can say, okay, where are we adding value, which I believe is about leadership and cultural development. And but you have to have that right. So just a word of caution, all of the things we need to think about absolutely in terms of how we add value, but let's not forget what we're in the organisation to do and how we are seen by others.
Yeah, and to what extent does the organisation allow us to do it? Because I really like the idea of having the direct conversation with people and going through them and listening to them. But how do we do that in a network economy where a lot of your colleagues are not present at the workplace when you are there? They're working remotely, they dial in, they're on all sorts of media. So that's why I say that the how of the communication is so important. When you got a mail from your boss that says, I want you to come to my office next Wednesday, what will that do with you? How will you behave in the week between that meeting and having that that mail? But if that mail says, hey, I'm really pleased with the work you do, I would like to share some experiences that I have to see how we could bring this forward, that will be a difference. And I think, honestly, this is where I see a lot of bad behavior coming up in organizations. And if you look at the way people use their communication style, that really affects you. And whether we admit it or not, it affects us. Yeah? So, coming back to the performance management, and I don't want to give away everything that you're going to say, CJ, my question is, what do you measure and what is done with it?
Okay, so measurement, I think, is a really interesting one for our profession as well, because again, I think for a number of years, we have focused on measurement purely as a way to prove that we are doing a good job. So kind of how many appraisal forms we get in every year and how many people have filled in an engagement survey, and really are we absolutely considering whether that thing that we've decided to measure really drives the performance of our organisation. And I think oftentimes we become so obsessed with proving that we're worth being in a business that we forget that actually if we stopped that obsession and really obsessed about the performance of an organisation, just imagine what kind of a different sort of magic we could make. And I think that's the thing that I find really interesting is I don't believe there is one way to measure everything, and that one way is going to be... The reason we keep reinventing ourselves in the people space is because there isn't one answer. Because if there is, you wouldn't need us and we'd all just get on with it. And that's the reality. Lots and lots of things need to be measured so that we can spend time reflecting on all aspects of our organisation and finding ways to improve it. So a number of things should be measured. Engagement shouldn't be measured with an annual survey, for example. Again, my view. It should be lots of interactions in your business that measure engagement. You know, communication, I don't believe should be the remit of the HR function. It should be the remit of everybody. And how does HR facilitate really powerful and strong communications in your business? And in a world where instant, ongoing feedback is available all of the time, you know, making sure we're not waiting to give that feedback. No one goes to see Madonna in a concert and waits a year to clap. And that's kind of what we're asking people to do. And, you know, I feel quite passionately that, you know, we become so fixated on best practice and wanting to replicate what everybody else is doing, we forget that we absolutely have a responsibility to look at our own organisations and find the best way that works for us. I've probably waffled on in quite a passionate way about that, but it's quite important.
No. Any other view on performance and how to measure it and what rhythm to use for measuring it?
I'd just really add to what CJ said in terms of it's not the once a year, twice a year event for sure, and we all know that, and we've all been talking about continuous feedback, but it is for me, we perhaps need to agree to disagree around the comms. Yes, of course, everyone needs to take a part and support comms, but I think HR and people definitely need to be the drivers of it. And for me, it's not really about measuring performance. We are moving now to a much more collaborative world and individuals taking ownership for themselves. So it's about aligning expectations, managing expectations that are continually changing from the moment you walk into an organisation or whether you're there for several decades. There's a continuous cycle of change, and therefore the expectations of both parties, both the business and both individuals, is continually changing and shifting, and it's just continuing aligning those expectations, which in turn will support and manage performance.
So, I completely endorse actually parts of what both of you have said. So, I think you need to think about, exactly as CJ was saying, what's the business calling for at the moment? And that'll keep evolving and changing. So, and I think it is important that people can see the link with what I'm doing day to day and how I'm delivering it with what the business wants. So what we've done recently is, and we still have our annual appraisal performance management system, but actually it's focused on the priorities. So one of our business priorities is growth. So, okay, so what 2 or 3 things are you doing, every person in the global organisation? What are your priorities to drive the growth? Then there's something around maintaining operational excellence, so like your day job, line manager, whatever it might be, and then the how we're doing things. So, but it's really focused on, let's think about those key things that you are doing to drive the performance of the business, rather than I'm doing my job and this is what I've always done. So it's actually, the secret, I think, is having the agility. So I think what both CJ and Sheila were saying about, think about what your organisation's calling for, think about how you can signal that with your people locally, so everybody can think, this is actually how I'm connecting to what the global organisation or the local organisation, whatever it is trying to deliver. That's the real sweet spot, I think.
And I fully agree with it. And the difficult thing is when you focus on growth, you're 2011 and you're Greece. And you have the calibration meeting with your boss, who is the regional manager for SEMEA, and you tell him, I've been to Greece, I've been with these people, they've done great. And they're all above average. Not that they're not unique, but they're all doing great because they kept the morale high in a market that was going down like hell. And your boss says, well, we all give them an below average. Because you cannot have a team that works well when the results are not well. Now, this is where I think it's difficult. And that when you really start to disagree with the way, and that's why I come back to the CEO, that you really need to have HR in the heart and the head of the CEO of the company. And if behavior is not there, you will be constantly defending and trying to find that level where you can agree on how to award people for doing a great job in a tough situation. So.
And actually goes beyond the CEO, because actually it's the shareholders. If you're a listed company, what are they looking for? They're looking for the results, the delivery, the sales and the EBIT. So that's challenging.
Yeah. I would love to have, I would love to have the CEO standing up to his shareholders and telling, look, leave us alone for 2 years. Because that makes it really difficult. Because, I know that you're right, but we need to hit that number. And that's where a lot of problems find their origins.
So if anybody's got any answers to that or anything that's working well in their businesses, would be helpful.
I think there's an interesting parallel in sports coaching. I think there's an interesting parallel in sports coaching, and a lot of the progressive coaches focus on you can't always affect the results because your competition is at play. But you can affect the performance indicators that can get to the results. And I was speaking to someone who was running an asset management business yesterday, actually, and she was adopting some of this philosophy because she says in market turmoil, there's no way we can affect the results. But they're trying to understand the criteria that should lead to the results that they would expect in creating alpha. And so I think sort of understanding that kind of value chain of how you're going to create results and then having an honest conversation where you can say to a team that's lost to a competitor but they've performed really well, and you can say you're exceptional, and you can also say to a team that beat a competitor but didn't perform well, and you can say you really underperformed, is a true sign of how you understand performance. And I think there's a strong parallel in business that many business leaders could adopt.
Yeah. I fully agree to that. I don't know for you ladies.
Yeah, and I think it depends how you define reward. So I think there's clearly, obviously, there's a real strong connection with actually the money that I get. So if my bonus is actually on the business results, what are the other ways that you can help people feel really good about working for the business? I mean, that's what we try and do, and we don't always get it right by a long way. We try things and see how we go. So people feel good, but it is challenging when you've got sales guys who are like targets, money, status, did I hit, that is really, it is challenging. So we try a broad range of things. I don't know what you guys do.
Yeah, I think reward and kind of that compensation and bonuses is a really fascinating subject, which all kind of people professionals should be right in the midst of at the moment. I don't know if any of you have read the book by Daniel Pink, which is enormously fascinating around how we are kind of incentivizing people, because we kind of have this obsession that lots of big pots of money are what's going to drive behaviours. But actually the reality of it is there's a tipping point. It's some kinds of roles are very much motivated by those kind of pots of money. Other kinds of roles are motivated in very different ways. And actually, very much my mantra is if we are continually imagining that one size fits all of our organisation or all of our businesses across the country or, for example, in South Africa, as we have our kind of other side of our business, it isn't going to work. Therefore, kind of absorbing lots of interesting information about what drives people is really important when you're considering reward and recognition, because big pots of money isn't always the answer, lovely as it is.
We ask people what drives their behaviour.
No, and that, I don't think we have enough conversations about why are you motivated, because I know certainly from a personal perspective throughout my career, I'm motivated in a very personal way, and there are certain things that make me want to spring out of bed and I love what I'm doing, and other things that I think, regardless of how many pots of money you give me, I'd probably rather stay in bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd just like to add really on the subject of exceptional people. I think you said about and achieving exceptional performance. I've often had many, I say arguments, but I'd say challenging discussions with some of my managers on can we really have a business that's full of, 100% full of exceptional people? And the argument, the challenge has been in the past, no, we can't. Not everybody is going to perform at that exceptional level. We need some of the, just the, the regular, the doers, just the ones that keep things ticking over. And I've always challenged that actually if you look at some specific organisations that really do drive that exceptional expectation for people. And again, what are the behaviours then that you can drive? But everybody is different. So how do we make everybody exceptional? I guess it's still really an open question and up for further challenges. Can we really operate in a business, particularly where it's tens of thousands of people, where you're all operating at that exceptional level? And do we really need to? Can people still add the value to the organisation without still working, of course, to their best of their ability and having all the right behaviours, but they perhaps wouldn't be regarded in the traditional appraisal sense of being that outstanding and exceptional performer? So is there a place for everyone? And if there is, again, how do we continue to motivate these people that they know they just perhaps haven't got that natural competency, that natural ability or the experience and skills to perform at levels that they see their colleagues performing at. But it's recognising what they are good at and how they can be valued. And that's huge. Obviously, I'm sure you'll all agree in terms of being able to have confidence in people. And people feeling valued in an organisation at whatever level that they are physically and mentally able to perform at.
I fully concur with the exceptional people, that we don't have all to be exceptional people in the eyes of the rater, because that is where it starts. I think you can have exceptional good performers that are not changing everything every day, but that are exceptionally loyal to the task that they have, and they really get their energy out of doing it. So in that sense, I think you should strive for a 100% exceptional people. Yeah. Unfortunately, the boardroom wants a bell curve. And they want you to force your performance curve like this. And where are your 10% low performers? And when you have this in mind, your performance starts to go in that direction. And I don't think that is a good system that we should stick to. But CJ, I'm sure you are going to tell us more about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I may have a very different opinion from people in the room, but I think there's a widespread belief now that forced rankings is a rubbish idea. I mean, sorry to be, but I mean, it felt like a rubbish idea when we were doing it. You know, you sit there thinking, gosh, you know, this is really quite difficult to manage, because how do you keep someone motivated if you're saying you're in the bottom 10%, even if they are still extraordinary? You know, if something feels like we shouldn't be doing it, I mean, there's an argument to say perhaps we all knew it was a bit pants when we were doing it. So, yeah, I think it's forced rankings, in my humble opinion, is absolute nonsense. I think you cannot get the best out of people by saying, in a group of 10 people, I'm measuring you against everybody else in this group of 10 people. I mean, gosh, it's not going to be, from a human nature point of view, the best way to really drive performance. I mean, absolutely, you'll have people who are extraordinarily competitive, who want to be at the top of those 10 people, and that's what drives them. So maybe you drive a kind of top few percent, but overall, I think forced rankings is widely acknowledged by our profession now as not the best way to go about performance management. But I may be, you know, there may be people in here who are working with forced rankings that think, oh, shut up, CJ.
No, and I fully agree with what the gentleman said about the parallel to sports. You can have the team performing exceptionally well, but when you're beaten by another team, then are you the worst of the two? And it all starts in education. When you come home and you have a grade of 8 out of 10, and the question that you had, did you end up first in the class? And we have just taken that to the workplace. So I don't want to be too, well, Southern European in that, because we want to feel guilt all the time. But we are responsible as HR as well, because we have kept on doing this, whilst it doesn't add to better performance.
I think this is born out of our obsession in HR, again, as I come back to our desire to prove that we are personally doing a good job. And I think some of that is, you know, we've got X amount of bits of paper in per year, and X amount of those bits of paper say these people are performing. And that, you know, I'm not saying that doesn't drive performance, because, gosh, we've all done it for a very long time. If it's doing nothing, then we're all really daft. But I think that there has been a, you know, just we've kind of got caught up in that whole let's prove what we're doing, rather than are we fundamentally driving the performance of our organisations.
Or was the intention, just to put another angle, because I'm just thinking actually why was it we originally started doing that? So one of the intentions could have been to enable managers to think about how they differentiate and how they talk about their people, and really differentially develop. Forget the actually assessing performance, but actually what you do want a manager to do is to actually, I want my manager to understand me, what motivates me, you know, where are my development or growth areas, rather than putting me in a lump. So it could well have been that that was one of the intentions where it came from, and maybe it just went just too far down one avenue.
Absolutely, and I think with all of these things, it probably started with we need a process and procedure to encourage managers and people to understand what their responsibilities are when it comes to people. And I think you're absolutely right. It will have, all of these things start with really great intentions, I think.
Absolutely. And then it's saying, where are we on our journey in the organisation? So if any of you are sitting there thinking, gosh, we do forced rankings, oh, that's wrong. Actually, just think about where are we in our evolution as an organisation? What are the benefits that that's delivering for me now? And is it time to change now or not? Because I think it's easy as well to make ourselves wrong in HR. There's something about our self-esteem, I don't know. But so, you know, and that's one thing to think about today. You know, for my organisation where I'm sitting, what is right for us, as opposed to, gosh, they're doing that, maybe we should be doing that.
And our self-esteem should not come from the P&L that we are driving, because we are definitely, most of the time, having the largest cost, being the people. I think we have for one more question. Yeah? Imagine you come to the board and you say, we are going to stop doing the annual performance cycles. This is that many hours that we are going to save, and we are going to start with mindfulness. Thought about that?
Well, I did say to my board, we're going to stop doing the performance appraisals. So I've had that conversation and I got this look. But yeah, mindfulness is kind of something that we talk about a lot at the moment, and it is kind of very much a hot topic for the people profession. I think it's around what it will bring to your business. You know, if you need to know why you want to introduce that, what it will bring, and kind of the response you'll get. And it's around, you know, if you can just throw anything at a board and say, this is a new fad, what do you think about us doing that? It's, you know, going with some commitment to it making a difference, I think, is key. So, yeah.
It's interesting, actually. We've been, if not calling it mindfulness, actually, but for quite a few years, actually, you know, talking about being present, so, you know, being rather than doing, and actually with the Northern European Cluster Board, actually, and what I do is rather than say we're going to do mindfulness, actually say, why don't we just stop for a minute, take a deep breath, what is it we're trying to, what's our intention for this particular session, and that's mindfulness. It's just stopping and getting most value. So let's not get caught up in the sexy language. Let's just think about, you know, what you were saying is what works best. I mean, we had an offsite earlier this year, and we actually had everybody meditating, and which was like, wow, I was quite impressed that we got to that place. But that wouldn't work for everybody. But there are simple things that you can do, because it's just about stopping, setting your intention, breathing, slowing down, getting out of your head a bit.
I would just add around any new concept that the business is going to introduce. It's around educating the teams on what does that mean. It's going to be perhaps a scary concept. What the hell does mindfulness mean? Are we going to go off and start meditating with each other, taking our shoes off, wondering, did you make sure you didn't put a pair of socks on that had holes in them that morning? So it's just preparing people for that change, preparing them for what it is that they're going to expect, and so that they feel that they can have some control and ownership with it. Yeah. I think that's key.
Yeah. And it is a fancy word, but for me it's really when you have a meeting with the people that you are not doing something else, you're not wandering off, you are in the meeting room listening to each other. For me that's the start of mindfulness. Jason?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.